What if the most powerful force draining your energy isn't your job, your diet, or even your emotions, but the room you trust to heal you? Think about that. Every night we return to the same space. We lie down in the same bed, and we hope that rest will arrive like a gift. But what if the very space meant to restore you, your bedroom, is quietly stealing from you instead? You may be doing everything right. Sleeping 8 hours, turning off your screens, taking your supplements, and still, something feels off. You wake up heavy, foggy, not broken but not whole either. In Feng Shui, the bedroom is considered the most sacred part of the home, not because of sleep, but because it is the only place where your energy becomes completely unguarded. The energy you lie down beside is the energy you wake up with. And yet, most of us fill this space with cluttered corners, mirrors that startle the soul, and forgotten objects that carry yesterday's tension. We focus on the bed's softness, but forget the air's stillness, the scent's tone, the angle of light, the memory in the fabrics. This is not about fear. This is not about superstition. This is about awareness, spatial honesty, and the subtle ways in which your bedroom might be shaping your fatigue, not just through what it holds, but through what it forgets to release. So tonight we will walk through the space where your body sleeps, but your spirit stays awake. We will rediscover the unseen architecture of your rest, the way color, placement, and energy can either nourish you deeply or quietly drain you night after night. And if quiet reflections like this speak to you, I invite you to stay with me. Like this video if it stirs something familiar. Share it with someone who hasn't been sleeping well. And please subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We're not rushing toward numbers. We're building something slower, steadier, more rooted. One room at a time, one truth at a time, one breath at a time. 1. The bed as an energetic altar. There's a reason the bed is the first thing most people think about when they walk into a bedroom, and the last thing they forget when they leave. But beyond its function of providing comfort, warmth, and rest, the bed in Feng Shui is regarded as something far more essential. It is not just a piece of furniture, it is the energetic altar of the home. It's the place where we surrender our guard, realign our nervous system, and often, without knowing, recalibrate the emotional residue of the day. And yet, too often, we treat the bed like an afterthought, pushed into a corner, crowded with laundry, backed against nothing at all. But when your body lies still, your energy does not. It listens, it responds, it reconfigures based on everything that surrounds it. In classical Feng Shui, the placement of the bed tells a silent story about your relationship to stability. The headboard is more than wood or fabric. It is a metaphor for how supported you feel in your daily life. A solid, well-anchored headboard against a firm wall communicates to your subconscious. You are held. You don't have to brace. When there is no headboard, or when the bed floats in the center of the room, or worse, is aligned with a window or open passage, people often report feeling ungrounded. They may wake feeling emotionally scattered, physically sore, or mentally foggy. Not because the mattress is bad, but because the bed, energetically, is untethered. Consider direction too. While placement varies depending on personal birth elements, health conditions, and floor plan constraints, there are foundational principles that transcend customization. The foot of the bed should never point directly out the door, a configuration known in Feng Shui as the coffin position. It's not about superstition, it's about energy flow. In this alignment, the body is directly in the path of outgoing qi. It invites a constant, subliminal sense of exposure or departure. Over time, it wears on the nervous system, especially for sensitive sleepers. Mirrors near the bed, particularly those that reflect the sleeper's body, are another common but energetically disruptive arrangement. In theory, they double what they face. But in practice, mirrors facing the bed can disrupt rest by amplifying motion, splitting personal energy, or creating a sense of surveillance. Many people report waking throughout the night when sleeping across from a mirror, even without knowing why. In the language of qi, it is simple. Rest cannot settle when the space multiplies itself. Remove or drape the mirror, and the space often quiets instantly. Now, to ground this in a real-life example, Consider Ariana Huffington, founder of the Huffington Post and a vocal advocate for redefining success and well-being. Years ago, after collapsing from exhaustion and fracturing her cheekbone, she didn't just reduce her screen time or improve her schedule. She completely redesigned her bedroom. Huffington removed all electronics. She replaced her TV with an analog clock. She shifted her bed to face a more grounded direction. Her linens became softer, her lighting warmer. And most importantly, she backed her bed with a solid headboard and a stable wall. She didn't just change her surroundings, she gave her nervous system a new anchor. She later described the shift not as luxury, but necessity. The bedroom, she said, became a place of transition, from doing into being. This is the very principle feng shui has held for centuries. When your bed is aligned, firmly placed, respectfully supported, and thoughtfully distanced from energetic distractions, you don't just sleep better. You start waking up differently. You start remembering yourself before the day begins. You don't rise with dread or demand. You rise into space that already feels trustworthy. If you have ever tossed and turned without knowing why, if you've ever woken exhausted from a full night's sleep, or felt emotionally raw before your feet even touch the floor, take a moment to walk into your bedroom. Don't analyze it, just feel it. Where does your eye go? Where does the weight of the room settle? Does your bed feel like a container or a question? Your body already knows. 2. The hidden weight beneath you. There is a quiet truth that often goes unnoticed in the architecture of our lives. What rests beneath us while we sleep does not remain neutral. Just because something is out of sight does not mean it is out of energy. Under the bed, a space often claimed by forgotten storage bins, shoes we no longer wear, old tax records, extra linens, and sentimental boxes, is where our energetic residue collects. And though it may not make a sound, its presence speaks to the nervous system every night. In classical feng shui, the area directly beneath the bed is considered an extension of the subconscious. The body lies still, but the qi continues to circulate, and what lives beneath you becomes part of the field your energy must pass through. In simple terms, if you are resting above chaos, your rest itself may struggle to find order. Think of the bed as more than a place of sleep. It is a cradle of recalibration. Every night your mind releases, your breath slows, your muscles surrender. But your energy, it whispers downward. And when it meets a landscape of clutter, it doesn't vanish, it gets tangled. That bag of old letters under your mattress, the unfinished to-do lists, the exercise equipment gathering dust, the suitcase from last year's trip you never really came back from, they all hold energetic signatures. Not because they are bad things, but because they are unresolved things, unspoken, unprocessed. And over time, what lies under your bed begins to mirror what lies under your awareness. Psychologically, this concept aligns with something increasingly recognized in modern wellness. The state of your environment mirrors the state of your mind. Messy room, messy head. But more subtly, hidden clutter equals hidden tension. Darshari Borg-Carter, a psychologist who studies the link between physical environments and mental well-being, has written that clutter is not just visual noise, it's emotional weight. It makes it harder to focus, harder to relax, harder to dream clearly. And if that's true for what we can see, how much more potent might it be for the things we can't? Especially the things resting inches from our most vulnerable state, our sleep. This is where the story of Marie Kondo becomes particularly relevant, not just as a tidying expert, but as someone who tapped into something deeply energetic without ever naming it so. Her rise to cultural prominence was not simply due to folding techniques or minimalist aesthetics. It was because people discovered that letting go of physical clutter often catalyzed emotional release. Her simple question, "Does this spark joy?" became a ritual of personal reckoning. People cried while decluttering. They slept better. They made new decisions. They remembered who they were before the excess. Kondo's philosophy, though often framed as practical, brushed up against spiritual law. When we make space, something softer arrives. Underbed storage, while common and often considered necessary, becomes problematic when it shifts from intentional use to subconscious hiding. Ask yourself gently, What's living under your bed right now? Is it a curated set of seasonal linens, folded with care and changed out with rhythm? Or is it a collection of postponed decisions, a graveyard of what-ifs? Feng Shui doesn't condemn practicality, but it always asks, what message are you sending to your energy? Sleeping above weight we've emotionally avoided can unconsciously keep us tethered to emotional loops we think we've outgrown. This is why many practitioners recommend, at the very least, that the space beneath the bed remain open, clear, and breathable. Air should be able to flow freely. Energy, too. If you must store things under the bed, do so with reverence. Use natural materials like woven baskets or wood. Avoid plastic bins or metal frames, materials that can hold and trap heat, static, or dullness. And never store items that carry emotional charge. Mementos from past relationships, expired dreams, broken electronics, or anything you keep just in case. These are not neutral objects. They're symbols. And symbols, even silent ones, carry frequency. If this feels overwhelming, start with a practice I often suggest to students and clients. A bedroom fast. Not from food, but from clutter. For 30 days, remove everything from beneath your bed. Even if it's just linens or neatly stacked books. Let the space breathe. Let your energy move without interruption. Then track what shifts, not just in how you sleep, but in how you think, how you speak to yourself, how long you linger before starting the day. These are subtle metrics, yes, but they are often more honest than any sleep tracker or productivity app. In my own life, I remember a period of strange dreams, vivid, restless, and emotionally dense. I was navigating a time of transition, unsure of what direction my work would take, feeling scattered despite structured plans. A mentor suggested I clear under my bed. I resisted. It felt unrelated, unnecessary. But when I finally relented, I discovered an old suitcase I had left there months before. It still held workshop materials from a retreat I had led in a version of myself I no longer identified with. I had grown, but I had never formally released that version of my work or the weight of responsibility it carried. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, not because of a placebo, but because the space beneath me no longer pulled me backward. The takeaway is not that every object holds us hostage, but that some of them speak in frequencies too subtle for our daytime awareness. The bed is sacred. It is the altar where your past meets your potential, where your body softens so your spirit can rise. And what lives beneath it is not inert. It is in many ways a forgotten language. So tonight, if you feel called, lift your mattress. Peek beneath, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What have you been sleeping above? What parts of your story still linger there, waiting to be witnessed, moved, or released? And more importantly, who might you become if you made space beneath you for stillness? In the next section, we'll move from what lies beneath you to what surrounds you. Because the walls of your bedroom are not just structural, they are emotional landscapes. And what they hold, they reflect. 3. Electronics, the fire that never sleeps. It's easy to forget that fire in its modern form has changed costumes. We no longer gather around open flames in the middle of our homes to cook, to warm, or to share stories. But the presence of fire still lingers, just beneath the surface of the glowing screen we reach for when we should be sleeping. Our phones, our tablets, our ever-connected devices hum softly beside our pillows, never truly silent, never truly resting. They are fire in disguise, small but bright, warm but erratic, promising connection, yet offering exhaustion. And in the stillness of night, that fire becomes the flame that never stops burning. From a feng shui perspective, this disruption is not merely symbolic, it's energetic. The bedroom is meant to be the chamber of yin, the place where the energy softens, where the body folds inward, and the spirit gently untangles from the demands of the outer world. But when we bring fire into that space, especially digital fire, it throws off the entire balance of elemental alignment. Fire belongs to the realm of action, of outward motion, of stimulation and visibility. It belongs to the peak of the day, the heart of the sun. But when brought into the bedroom, especially after dark, it becomes intrusive, like shining headlights into a meditation hall. What should dimly rest begins to flicker again. Even when turned off, a phone beside the bed is not neutral. In terms of Qi, it is a fire-aligned object that broadcasts subtle signals, much like an alarm system that never fully disarms. The nervous system listens to more than just sound. It listens to frequency, proximity, and expectation. A device that sleeps next to you is never really off. It's asking your energy to stay alert, just in case. Just in case a message comes through. Just in case the world needs you. Just in case something happens. This chronic just-in-case posture is antithetical to true rest. It is why, even after 7 or 8 hours of unconsciousness, so many people wake up feeling unrestored. Their bodies slept, perhaps, but their Qi did not. Their energetic field remained coiled, like a tiger waiting at the edge of a jungle, ready to pounce, to check, to respond. Modern science supports this ancient insight. The blue light emitted by screens disrupts melatonin production, delaying the body's natural inclination towards sleep. But even beyond the light, it is the content, the flood of information, the emotional stimuli, the open loops of digital conversation that keeps the mind from softening. The bedroom becomes less of a sanctuary, more of a control room. Contrast this with the nightly rhythm of Bill Gates, who famously ends each day not with screens, but with a printed book. For decades, he has made space for analog stillness, choosing to close his evenings not with a barrage of digital input, but with the slow, silent absorption of words on a page. This is not nostalgia, it's design. The act of unplugging is not about abandoning technology. It's about signaling to the nervous system, we are safe now, we can soften. Nothing is coming that requires armor. It's this quality of safety, of closing the loop, that we must reintroduce into our spaces. Feng Shui is not superstition, nor is it purely aesthetic. It is the study of how space influences spirit. And in that language, the presence of electronics in the bedroom is like leaving the stove on while you sleep. The fire may be low, but it is still burning. There's a quiet ritual I often recommend to clients, especially those who struggle with nighttime anxiety, poor sleep, or a general sense of mental fatigue that lingers like fog. It begins not with meditation, but with a woven basket. A humble, grounded container made of natural materials, rattan, seagrass, or bamboo. Place it just outside the bedroom door. This becomes the resting place for your electronics each night, not with frustration, not as punishment, but with intention. Before stepping into your bedroom, pause at this basket, gently power down your devices. Whisper to yourself, not loudly but with clarity, I release this signal, I return to myself. Then place your phone, your tablet, whatever else it may be, into the basket like you would extinguish a flame. Carefully, respectfully. You are not rejecting connection. You are choosing its timing. You are choosing silence. And in the morning, don't snatch your device from the basket the moment you wake. Instead, greet your space first. Let your body stretch. Let your breath return. Open your blinds. Drink water. Walk slowly. Then, when you retrieve your device, do so like you would light a ceremonial lamp. Not a flare, not a jolt, not a reflex. A lamp that lights the day with purpose. This shift, though seemingly small, is energetic gold. It turns the digital fire from something that scorches into something that serves. It reclaims the boundary between your inner life and the world's demands. And most importantly, it allows the bedroom to return to its ancient function, a cradle for renewal. Let me share a story that has stayed with me. A client of mine, a writer in her mid-40s, came to me not because she couldn't write, but because she couldn't dream. She was exhausted, emotionally muted, and unsure why. Her home was organized. Her health was stable, but her spark, the sense of inner brightness, was dim. We walked through her space together, and it was the bedroom that caught my attention. Next to her bed, a charging station. Phone, tablet, smartwatch, all glowing quietly while she slept. Her explanation was typical. It's how I unwind. I check emails, read a few articles, maybe scroll social for a while. She was bathing in fire. We made one change. The woven basket ritual. At first, she felt restless, untethered. But within 2 weeks, her dreams returned. Not because of any spiritual intervention, simply because the fire had been moved outside the sleeping chamber. Her energy, for the first time in years, was allowed to close its eyes. This isn't a rejection of technology, it is a restoration of timing. Fire in all forms is a powerful ally, but when misplaced, especially in the sacred hours of night, it becomes a thief of clarity, of presence, of renewal. The body will eventually rest, but the energy, it needs silence to return to harmony. So tonight, as you prepare for bed, I invite you to walk the room one last time before you sleep. Look at the devices you've invited into your most intimate space. Ask yourself, not with guilt, but with curiosity, are these tools helping me return to myself, or are they holding me just outside the gate of rest? Then choose one small shift, a basket, a cloth, a power button. Let the fire sleep when you do, and let your night become whole again. 4. Objects that pretend to be alive. There's something uncanny about walking into a room where beauty feels frozen, where everything seems arranged just so, where nothing is out of place, but also where nothing breathes. You might not notice it right away. On the surface, the room is clean, decorated, pleasing, and yet something in your chest stays braced. You don't quite exhale. You smile politely, but you don't soften. It's the energetic equivalent of holding your breath in a room full of mannequins, silent, polished, but empty. In Feng Shui, this phenomenon has a name. It's called dead qi, the residue of energy that looks alive but isn't. It's the floral arrangement made of silk, the plant that's long since dried and shellacked into permanence, the decorative twigs tied together by factory string. It's the broken doll from a childhood shelf, the taxidermy bird in an heirloom cabinet, the stuffed animal that hasn't been touched in 20 years. They all have one thing in common. They pretend to be something they are no longer. They mimic life, but they do not carry it. Qi, the life force that animates all things, is sensitive to imitation. It moves toward authenticity. It responds to what breathes, what evolves, what reflects the moment. Artificial flowers do not decay. And that's precisely the problem. They do not breathe, do not shift with the seasons, do not soften with time. In classical Feng Shui, they are seen as energetic trickery, holding the shape of life but none of its presence. And in that discrepancy, something in us tightens. Compare this to the principle of wabi-sabi in traditional Japanese aesthetics. Wabi-sabi is the reverence for transience, for the beauty of imperfection and the grace of time. A real flower, even if it wilts, even if it drops its petals, carries dignity. It lived, it expressed, it changed. A clay cup with a fine crack, a handmade paper with frayed edges, a wooden bowl with the warmth of many palms. These are not mistakes. They are reminders of presence, of care, of humanity. In that worldview, the artificial object is not just inauthentic, it's unrooted. Let's look at it through the lens of a story, one that may surprise you. Coco Chanel, the icon of sharp taste and timeless design, once made a subtle but radical shift in her Paris apartment. In the early years of her rise, her space had been filled with ornate objects, gilded mirrors, Baroque trimmings, overly elaborate accents. But over time, as her clarity sharpened, she began removing the excess. She stripped away what was performative and retained only what spoke softly but with presence. Real crystal, unpolished wood, a small white camellia in a glass. She was not a minimalist, but she understood restraint. She understood that energy accumulates, not just through clutter, but through the mismatch between appearance and soul. By removing what was trying too hard, she made room for what simply was. The lesson here isn't about style, it's about alignment. When we surround ourselves with objects that simulate life, we subtly lose contact with the real rhythms of living. The flower that never fades teaches us nothing about grace. The doll that smiles eternally has nothing to say about change. Even the most beautiful silk orchid, if untouched by breath or season, becomes a symbol of arrested time. Now, this isn't a call to purge every decorative item in your space, but it is an invitation to re-examine what speaks and what mimics. What in your space carries story and what merely fills a gap? The modern home is often filled with placeholders, items purchased quickly, chosen for color or symmetry, not for meaning. And yet, we expect these objects to comfort us, to uplift us, to hold us in our private hours. But when we decorate with imitation, we nourish our energy with simulation. We fill the emotional pantry with packaging, not substance. Instead, I offer a few gentle replacements, not rules but invitations. If you love the shape and presence of flowers, consider a salt lamp. It glows gently with the light of earth. It changes slightly in moisture. It needs occasional wiping. It lives with you. Or perhaps a piece of rose quartz. Not because it's magical, but because it's mineral memory, something forged in time and pressure, now sitting quietly in your space as a symbol of soft strength. Or a wooden bowl, small, polished by hand, empty or filled with small, seasonal objects. A pine cone in winter, a sprig of rosemary in spring. It doesn't need to be expensive. It needs to be honest. These objects don't pretend. They don't hold false bloom. They don't say, "Look at me." They say, "Here I am." That is the kind of energy we crave in our homes, even when we don't yet have the words for it. We must remember, home is not a showroom. It is a partner in rest, a mirror of the self we become when no one is watching. And when we fill it with still, quiet, natural objects, things that breathe slowly with the rhythm of the day, we create a space where our own energy is allowed to breathe too. I once worked with a couple who had just moved into a sleek, modern condo. Everything was white, polished, symmetrical. On the surface, it was beautiful. But they were exhausted. Arguments were frequent. Sleep came shallow. They couldn't understand it. "We've done everything right," they said. "The colors are right, the layout is open, but something's off." I walked the space slowly, as I always do, and then I noticed. On nearly every surface, artificial arrangements. Tall vases of synthetic grass. Perfect orchids in plastic pots. A bowl of fruit that had never known a tree. Everything was in bloom, but nothing had roots. We talked. We cleared one shelf, just one, replaced the faux arrangement with a clay bowl unglazed and a single sprig of fresh basil from the kitchen. That night they slept more deeply, not because of magic, but because the room exhaled. It always begins this way, one breath, one honest object, one small shift toward what is real. So perhaps tonight, take a quiet moment and walk your home, not with judgment, but with listening. Ask each object, are you pretending or are you participating? And trust your body's response. The tightness, the softening, the stillness. Then choose one piece, one lifeless bloom, one dusty doll, one artificial vine. Thank it and release it. You are not discarding beauty. You are making space for it. Real beauty breathes. Let your space do the same. 5. Visual energy, what you see before sleep. There's a quiet question most of us never ask, but perhaps should. What is the last thing your eyes rest on before sleep? Not your phone screen, not the inside of your eyelids, but what image lives across from your bed, or beside it, or above your headboard? What does your subconscious drink in during those final moments when your defenses are down, your breath slows, and your spirit prepares to drift inward? We often think of vision as something tied to action, to movement, to waking, to attention. But sight lingers even in stillness. Even with our eyes half closed, our brains continue to register shapes, contrasts, and shadows. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for scanning for danger, remains alert to strong visuals, even while the rest of the mind begins to rest. That means what you see last isn't just an aesthetic detail, it's an energetic instruction. It tells your nervous system what kind of night to expect, whether to soften or brace. In classical feng shui, this idea is gently echoed in the guidance for bedroom artwork. The space near and above the bed is considered sacred, not in a religious sense, but in a restorative one. It is where your chi goes to reorganize itself, where your thoughts lose their sharp edges, where your body receives and releases. And so, what you place in that visual field becomes more than decoration. It becomes tone, like music playing softly in the background of your unconscious mind. I once worked with a film editor in Los Angeles, a sharp, driven woman with impeccable taste and high creative standards. Her apartment was minimal and elegant, with curated furniture and a bedroom that seemed serene at first glance. But she confessed, "I sleep restlessly, my mind doesn't turn off, and when it does, my dreams are strange, always running, always urgent." I asked what she saw when she lay down. "Oh," she said, laughing, "just some artwork. I barely notice it anymore." And there it was. Above her headboard, 3 abstract oil paintings in deep blues and blacks, with jagged strokes that looked to me like frozen lightning. Beautiful, yes, but active, disruptive. And when paired with her profession, spending hours each day slicing through intense narrative sequences, it was as if the bedroom had become an extension of her edit suite. There was no invitation to exhale. We talked. She wasn't interested in pastels or landscapes, and I didn't push her toward cliches. Instead, I offered a quiet suggestion. Try a horizon, not a cliche beach scene, but something that reminds your body that expansion exists. She found a simple image, an abstracted sunrise in muted golds and soft grays, printed on textured linen. She hung it opposite the bed. Nothing else changed, not her job, not her schedule. But within a few weeks, her language changed. "My mornings feel longer," she said. "I wake up slower, but in a good way. It's like my body knows the day will arrive in its own time." Her dreams softened, her edits deepened, not because of the art itself, but because the room stopped shouting. This is not an argument against bold design, but it is a reminder. Energy speaks in images, and our bedrooms are places for recovery, not rehearsal. If your walls carry war, chaos, or motion, don't be surprised if your mind refuses to rest. Even the colors matter. Saturated reds or stark blacks may energize in the living room, but near the bed, they demand too much. Softer tones are from earth, sky, fog, linen, wood. Allow the spirit to remember stillness. They don't sedate, they cradle. It's also worth noticing the shadows. Do you have sharp corners or aggressive shapes near your line of sight? Mirrors that reflect clutter? Unfinished projects stacked in clear view? All of these create visual noise. Even with the lights off, your brain recalls what it last saw. And in the quiet hours, that recall becomes the texture of your rest. The invitation here is simple. Look around. Tonight, when you lie down, before your eyes close, ask, what am I seeing? Is it a visual lullaby or a silent to-do list? Is it a window to spaciousness or a mirror of my overwhelm? And then consider changing just one thing. One image, one object, one corner. Maybe it's a photograph of a quiet forest trail. Maybe it's a piece of handmade fabric hung like a banner. Maybe it's nothing, a bare wall that allows your breath to take center stage. The point isn't to decorate, it's to communicate, to send your system a message. You are safe, you are held, you can let go. Because in truth, rest is not the absence of activity, it is the presence of support. And visual support, gentle, slow, rooted, can mean the difference between sleep and restoration. Let your last image be one that whispers ease. 6. Aligning your sleep environment for fortune, not fatigue. Most of us measure sleep by numbers. Hours tracked, cycles calculated, devices that promise metrics for deep rest or REM performance. But in the quiet world of spatial energy, good sleep isn't only about how long you lie down. It's about what your environment is whispering while you do. It's about whether the space around you invites integration or subtly holds you in a loop of unrest. In classical feng shui, the bedroom is one of the 3 foundational spaces of a home, alongside the kitchen and the entryway. These aren't arbitrary. They correspond to the core human rhythms, nourishment, connection, and rest. But more importantly, these spaces hold the deepest Kai signatures. And unlike the entryway or kitchen, which are touched in passing, the bedroom holds you for hours at a time when you are most unguarded. So the energy it holds isn't fleeting. It soaks in. It shapes your clarity, your health, your finances, even the way you show up in the world. The bed, in this framework, becomes more than a frame and a mattress. It becomes a receiving structure, a place where your body uncoils from the day, where your mind rewires its thoughts, where your spirit returns to stillness. And so every detail around it speaks. Every placement becomes a signal. Let's begin with symmetry, not for design reasons, but for what symmetry represents energetically. When both sides of a bed are balanced, with matching nightstands, lamps, or at least a sense of equality in space, it fosters harmony not just within, but between. In relationships, asymmetry around the bed often shows up as emotional imbalance. One partner feeling more supported, more present, more seen. And even if you sleep alone, symmetry creates the visual and energetic impression that both sides of your being, your yin and your yang, your giving and your receiving, are equally valued. A lamp on one side and nothing on the other may seem trivial, but in the deep language of space, it says, only half of you matters here. Over time, that message lingers. Now consider this. Is your bed on wheels? Does it slide when you shift? Does it creak or feel unstable? In daily life, we tolerate these things. But in Feng Shui, an unstable bed is more than an annoyance. It's a metaphor made real. A life that doesn't quite land. A foundation that slips just enough to leave you feeling slightly unheld. Stability is not a luxury, it is a form of self-respect. If your bed has wheels, lock them. If it slides, anchor it. If the frame is wobbly, tend to it. Not just for comfort, but to signal to your spirit, you are steady, you are safe. And what about what lies beneath your bed? We've spoken before about clutter below, a story told in silence. But let's go one step further. Is your bed elevated at all? Can air pass beneath it? In traditional energy mapping, the flow of qi is like breath. It needs circulation. Just as fire grows with oxygen, your vitality grows when your sleep space is allowed to breathe. A mattress placed flat on the floor may feel grounding at first, but over time that grounding can become stagnation. Your dreams dim, your mornings blur. The shift is subtle, but the result is cumulative. A raised bed with space beneath it, even if kept clear, signals lightness. It allows energy to lift, to circulate, to refresh. It says, this space supports growth, not just sleep. And now, something less tangible, but perhaps more powerful. Movement as ritual. When was the last time you shifted your bed, even slightly? Not for cleaning, not for guests, but just to renew its energy? In modern life, we tend to freeze our rooms into position. Once the furniture lands, it rarely moves. But in Feng Shui, stagnation is the first sign of decline. So once a month, choose a quiet day or evening, light a candle, play soft music, and shift your bed, even if just an inch, even if just an intention. Let your body feel the change. Let the room reset its rhythm. It's not about rearranging the whole layout. It's about reminding your qi that nothing is fixed. That renewal is always available. You might find the next morning that your thoughts move more freely, that your breath feels more generous, that your energy, though not louder, is somehow clearer, because space listens, and when you shift it with reverence, it responds. This practice of adjusting, of aligning, of attuning, is not about perfection. It's not about chasing rules. It's about remembering that your bedroom is not separate from your fortune. It is not just where you end the day, it's where the next one begins. And when that beginning is supported, when the bed is stable, the air is clear, the balance is honored, your life too begins to reflect that quiet coherence. It's never too late to shift the energy of where you sleep. Sometimes all it takes is one small move to change the direction of your rest and everything that flows from it. 7. The micro rituals that transform your nights. It's easy to think that transformation happens in grand gestures, that if you want better sleep or a more prosperous morning, you need a new mattress, blackout curtains, or a full bedroom renovation. But sometimes the shift you're seeking doesn't live in size. It lives in softness. It lives in the quiet acts repeated each night that tell your body, your breath, and your energy, it's safe now, you can let go. These are what I call micro rituals, not superstitions, not routines born of fear or obligation, but small symbolic actions that create an energetic signature, deliberate, compassionate, and resonant. These rituals don't work because they're magical. They work because they're meaningful. They tether us back to rhythm in a world that constantly scatters us. Let me begin with something incredibly simple. Before you sleep tonight, before the light clicks off, before your phone is turned over and your to-do list fades into the folds of memory, place one hand gently on your pillow. Not as a performance, not with any pressure. Just rest it there and quietly say, either aloud or in your thoughts, "This space restores me." You don't need incense. You don't need mantra music. You don't need to get the words perfect. What matters is that the space hears you, that your nervous system hears you, because we spend so much of our waking life in reaction, responding to demands, to deadlines, to digital noise, that by the time we reach our pillow, we often treat it as an afterthought. But when you speak to the place you rest, it becomes sacred again. Not in a religious sense, but in the sense of recognition. You're telling the space, you matter. You're telling yourself, I matter. The second ritual is about anchoring that softness visually. Choose one small object, nothing expensive, nothing dramatic, and place it by your bed. It could be a feather, a smooth stone you found on a walk that felt inexplicably calming, a tiny ceramic dish passed down from someone you loved, something you don't use but something you notice, and let it live there, not as decor, but as a reminder. Each time your eyes catch it, let it whisper, "Peace belongs here." When I was younger, I kept a piece of driftwood beside my bed, polished by years of tide and time. I never moved it. I never explained it. But it sat there through every chapter. Losses, triumphs, nights of racing thoughts, and mornings of quiet resolve. It didn't do anything, but it held everything. That's what symbolic objects are for. Not to fix us, but to ground us. To reflect back to us something we've forgotten, that we are allowed to slow down. And then there is scent. In feng shui, we speak often of elements: fire, water, metal, earth, wood, and how they move within a space. But scent is an element all its own. It travels where the eye can't. It stirs memory, mood, and mind. And in the bedroom, it has the power to shift tone instantly. That's why I recommend using essential oils, gently, with reverence, not volume. Vetiver, rosewood, sandalwood, or chamomile. These are oils that don't shout. They hum, they cradle, they lower the tempo of your inner world without asking for performance. You don't need a diffuser if you don't have one. You can place a drop on a cotton pad, tuck it under your pillowcase, or blend it with water and mist it lightly across the sheets. But here's the key: don't oversaturate. This is not aromatherapy as a commercial act. This is the language of rest. Sleep energy is like a whisper. It doesn't respond well to force. Think of it like tuning an instrument. You don't slam the strings, you draw the bow, you let tone rise from tension, not through it. And while we're speaking of subtlety, let's speak of breath. Because breath is the thread that carries you from the outer world into the inner one. And most of us don't remember how we fall asleep, but the body does, the room does. So here's a ritual that isn't about control, it's about listening. After you've laid down, after your object is seen, your scent is placed, and your hand has touched the pillow with intention, just breathe. 3 slow inhales, 3 slow exhales. Don't count them. Don't try to make them perfect. Just witness them. Let the air move through you like tide. And with each breath, remind your body, you don't have to hold it all anymore. We live in a time that confuses stimulation for strength, that teaches us to run harder, to do more, or to collapse only when exhaustion has pushed us past the edge. But real strength isn't in the collapse, it's in the restoration. And real restoration doesn't come in one weekend retreat or a spa appointment or an expensive mattress. It comes in the decision, night after night, to be gentle with yourself, to partner with your space instead of using it as a backdrop, to walk into your bedroom as if it were a conversation, not a silence. I once read that the body heals fastest when it feels safe, and I believe the same is true for the spirit. Safety is not just locked doors and drawn curtains. It is intention. It is coherence. It is knowing that every part of your room, even the unseen ones, are aligned with your desire to return not escape. So tonight, before you tuck yourself in, remember this. You don't need to do everything. You just need to do one thing differently. Maybe it's placing your phone outside the room. Maybe it's lighting a candle for 3 minutes instead of scrolling for 30. Maybe it's finding that feather, that stone, that small gesture that says, this moment matters. Because when you treat bedtime not as a finish line, but as an entry point, your entire life begins to shift, slowly, steadily, softly. And those shifts ripple out into the mornings, into the way you greet the sun, into how you speak to the barista, into the clarity you bring to meetings, into the patience you carry in traffic, into the fortune that flows, not because you chased it, but because you were finally able to receive it. That's the power of ritual, not to perform, but to remember. You are not here to burn out. You are here to glow, and your room, the one you enter every night, already knows how to help you do just that. Final. And so we arrive at the quiet edge of this conversation, not with urgency, but with presence. Perhaps by now you're not thinking so much about how many hours you sleep, but about what surrounds you as you surrender to rest. Because the truth is, your bed is not just where your body goes still, it's where your energy begins again. It's where all the noise you absorb during the day gets filed, softened, and, if you're lucky, released. Maybe tonight, you'll see your bedroom differently. Not as a backdrop, but as a mirror. A living space that remembers how you show up for yourself when no one else is watching. A room that breathes with you, that whispers things you may have forgotten in the rush, like ease, or permission, or peace. Ask yourself gently, what in this room feels tired? Not messy, just forgotten. What in this space longs to be touched again with presence? Is it the drawer you always walk past? The underbed you haven't cleared in years? The scent you used to love but haven't lit in ages? There's no need to do everything. But if this reflection sparks something within you, an idea, a memory, a desire to clear just one thing, then let that be enough for today. Just one breath of awareness. That's where shift begins. And if this video gave you even a drop of clarity, even a moment of quiet encouragement, I would be deeply honored to hear from you. I invite you to share in the comments. What might you shift in your bedroom space this week? Or what have you already changed that made you feel lighter? And if you feel called to walk further with me on this journey of energy, of space, of self, I gently invite you to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. I'm slowly, quietly building toward 1,000 followers, not for numbers, but to reach more hearts like yours, so we can continue to share what's too often overlooked and gently restore the places we call home. Until next time, may your night be soft and your breath, your truest compass, remain steady. One room, one ritual, one mindful shift at a time.